And we're live to review the episode of Homicide: Life on the Street, Season 4, and the episode is called, Jeff?
No, it's not called Jeff, it's called Justice.
Right
Part
again.
1, which is the 14th episode of Season 4, although actually broadcast 13th because Full Moon was delayed until near the end of the season. And the teleplay was by David Ruppel, and the story by Tom Fontana and Henry Brommel, and directed by Michael Radford, and originally aired February 16th, 1996. Munch and Russert arrive at a cemetery where they find a body next to a tombstone and a dog barking viciously. The cause of death is most likely strangulation. When Munch takes the victim's wallet out, he finds that he was an ex-cop named Edgar Rosinski. Back at the precinct, Giardello tells the detectives not to leak any information. He went to the police academy with Edgar Rosinski's son, Jake. Munch and Russert, along with Lewis, inform Jake of his father's loss. They also return the dog, Max. Jake asks Lewis to keep an eye on the case, as he doesn't seem impressed with Munch and Russert's track records. They interview the cemetery's caretaker, who said he didn't see anything. Later, when a $20,000 reward is offered for any information leading to an arrest, the caretaker comes forward saying his daughter's deadbeat, car-stealing boyfriend, Kenny Damon, was at the gravesite that day and tried to strangle him. When a car and murder weapon is found with Damon's fingerprints on it, the detectives make an arrest, and Danvers takes the case to court. And much to the disappointment of Jake and the detectives, Damon is found not guilty. Episode Max, the dog, can be heard barking loudly while chained up in Jake Rosinski's backyard. One thing this recap doesn't mention, is that Jake asks one of the jury members what happened, and she explains it to him. That part, I'll say before I read Morris's review, the part with the jury is very much taken out of David Simon's book. There's a whole portion about how the jury factors into law enforcement and the prosecution of homicides. And the excuse that the jury forewoman gives in this, where basically most of the people didn't care that much and they just wanted to go home, that was actually taken. I can finish saying this because I didn't want to say the whole thing because it was a spoiler when we talked about it before. It is that in the book, I mentioned a while back that shooting of the police officer who on Homicide was called Chris Thorman, the one that got blinded by the guy.
Yeah.
That story was taken out of the book. That was a true story. But in the book, they go into much more detail of the prosecution of the guy who shot him, because he didn't actually confess in real life. So he went to trial and was acquitted. And what happened with the jury was taken from that case. So it was actually the cop who got blinded, it was the jury that basically acquitted the guy because they were tired, and there was one holdout or two that, didn't want to find him guilty.
Did they want to do that story, but decided that was too dark, too negative to go with the actual truth?
I don't know. I remember saying that I was surprised, actually, that they didn't carry that forward, because it seemed like that would have been a good, continuation of the story. But what happened is, from what I can gather, is that this was about the time that David Simon was, starting to get back involved with the show. He had co-written one episode earlier, but basically he wrote the teleplay for the next episode after this one. It isn't credited as being him, but he had some input into it, obviously. Right. And the jury stuff, like I said, is almost word for word out of the book in terms of the excuses. And I remember saying, once I heard that part of the book, because I was listening to the audiobook, I was surprised that they hadn't carried that out, and on the show they just ended it with the dude with the headaches just confessed, as opposed to going to trial. claiming to be not guilty. So anyway, okay, so here's David B226 Morris's take. He says, about the only positive thing about the demotion of Munch and Russert back to detective was that it gave the long wandering in the wilderness John Munch a partner for the first time in a few months. Munch really misses Bolander, and it's clear Russert isn't thrilled about being teamed with Munch. With all this tension between them and their obvious differences, we finally have two detectives not working as a well-oiled machine. This leads to some interesting sparks when the two of them investigate their first big case, Injustice, the murder of retired Baltimore cop Edgar Rudzinski. To add to the tension, they are under intense scrutiny from G, concerned as always about his police family and the bosses. Rudzinski's son is also on the police force and a personal friend of Meldrick Lewis, both of whom are more than a little pissed when the investigation putters around with no real leads. Considering Lewis and Jake's relationship, another cop show might have the two of them working together to catch his father's killer. This is still Homicide, however, and Jake's effort to help only lead to him being suspended and arrested. Watching Meldrick's interaction with Jake, we get even more of a look at Lewis as a person. With Kellerman out of state attending a wedding, and a little more into the past of this underused detective. Also very notable is the work of Bruce Campbell as Jake Rudzinski, best known for his work with Sam Raimi in the Evil Dead movies and Hercules and Xena TV franchises. Campbell is basically known for slapstick bordering on camp. This is one of the few straight roles that he has done, and he shows that he is more than up to the psychological drama of Homicide. After a lot of sensational cases, the investigation of Rudzinski's murder is comparatively low-key. There are, however, melodramatic flourishes, a couple of chase scenes, and more than one occasion when the detectives draw their guns. We also have the investigation come to a dead halt, the finding and arrest of a suspect, and then his trial in less than a week's time. Some would say that this is unrealistically fast, but considering some of the other occasions where Homicide has screwed around with the calendar, last year's shooting of the three detectives comes to mind, it's hard to raise real objections. For the first time in a very long time, the crossover with Law & Order excluded, Homicide goes to trial. The case against the killer, Kenny Damon, seems relatively strong. They have a clear indication of motive and opportunity. His fingerprints are found on Rudzinski's car, and the murder weapon with DNA evidence on it is in the trunk. However, a good lawyer could poke holes in this, and Darren Russum, proving again he will represent anybody, does so, pointing out that one of the witnesses did not come forward with critical evidence until a cash reward was offered, that Detective Lewis found some of the evidence, and that a lot of the evidence was circumstantial. We then get to see a real sign of frustration as Jake and the others wait for a verdict, adding an unusual level of edginess. The kicker comes, however, when the verdict comes back not guilty. Jake corners a juror in the hall and begs to know why they found Damon innocent. The reason is pretty simple. The jurors were basically indifferent, and they all wanted to get home for the weekend. The devastation on Jake's face when he hears this is absolutely shattering. A technicality can be understood, if not accepted, but this is heart-wrenching stuff. This almost, but not quite, makes his later actions understandable. There are more than a few melodramatic flourishes to Justice Part 1, not the least of which are two unrealistic, if dramatically effective, scenes where Jake Rudzinski confronts his father's killer before and after his trial and acquittal. But for the most part, the episode is more realistic and believable than some of the more hyped-up episodes earlier in the season. This one does make you want to see the next episode in a hurry. My score, 8.5. So, what do you think, Ben?
There's an interesting bit when this guy on screen, the defense lawyer, he offered a deal to, plea bargain for like second-degree murder, and Jake turned that down because he didn't want the suspect to be up for parole after 10 years.
Yep.
So Mr. Morris could have mentioned that bit in his review.
That's obviously that kind of thing gets dealt with a lot more on Law and Order because it's a whole the lawyers are a much bigger part of the show, and every single case pretty much has the wheeling and dealing of the plea bargaining behind the scenes. I have read from real lawyers saying that that's actually the most realistic part of Law and Order is the behind-the-scenes lawyer stuff. The stuff in the courtroom, like all television stuff, is a little bit embellished, but the behind-the-scenes stuff is usually pretty realistic in terms of the way lawyers talk to each other. Anyway, didn't mean to interrupt with that. But.
Yeah. I thought it was good. There wasn't any. There's a lot of tension. I think I'll give it. I think I'll give it an 8. I think that. Munch. I think the character of Munch needs to be developed a little bit more.
I don't. The more they delve into his personal life, the less I enjoy it usually. I really don't care about most of the stuff involved in his backstory. He's just messing around with other people.
Maybe about things that could change him. Or maybe he's too old to change.
He will have some more development later on, I'll say that.
I mean, he's only seen the cops get shot.
Yeah.
I mean, that had some lasting effect on him.
True.
Yeah, and that led to one of his best pieces of acting a few episodes back, when he sort of did a callback to that. Was it during the Sniper?
Yeah, when his scenes
Episodes.
with Power.
That was good. Yeah, that was good.
Yeah, I think it actually that was one thing where it actually sort of added to the drama of it, the fact that Felton and Bolander weren't around anymore, because it was like Howard's the last one left of those 3 that got shot, and Munch is like, I'm not letting you know the other 2 aren't dead, but still, it's like it sort of adds that feeling to it. Yeah, this one is not among my favorite episodes. There are elements I like of it. And I think, Bruce Campbell does a good job in his role. And, I liked the working in of the jury trial stuff. And especially, I think, after I listened to that part of the audiobook, I actually liked it a little bit better, because I knew that it was right out of the book, basically. And it was an opportunity to kind of, again, show the disappointment and sometimes randomness that can occur in the system,
I thought the defense lawyer was well written, and maybe quite a few defense lawyers may have been watching going, oh, that's a good idea, that's a good tactic. They might be taking notes.
Yeah, I mean, and throughout the show, Russell makes quite a few appearances, and he's always effectively lawyery. He's definitely like, there's a reason why he's doing this. He's pretty good at finding every possible way that he can get somebody off, but sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
In fact, don't you think he should be like a corporate defense attorney if it's that good? Rather than...
Yeah, I mean, they don't obviously go into that, so I don't know who all he defends, but obviously he's not somebody that demands a super high price from everybody, or he wouldn't be able to defend some of these people that don't exactly have a lot of money to be spending.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's not specified any time that I know of that he's doing it pro bono or anything like that, so he just takes whatever pops up whenever they actually need to have a defense attorney present for some reason, like when he defended Annabella Wilgus back in season 3, and Pony Johnson.
Oh, is she the one with the multiple personality disorder?
Yes. Yep. And there will be, I won't go into any spoilerish details on that, but there will be a pretty dramatic scene that lawyer is involved in later on. So look forward to that.
So I think this lawyer was better written than the lawyer in Law and Order crossover episode.
The defense attorney guy? Yeah, I agree. that was definitely a weak link in that. And I don't think that guy's a bad actor. I just think that character just was.
Yeah.
They wrote him kind of lousy.
Yeah, I mean, appealing to the prejudices is one thing, but then right at the end, making it so blatant.
Yeah.
It would have been better as more of as a subtext, but
Yeah, I mean that's the kind of thing where you almost think they could add the added twist of saying that he was trying to throw the case by doing that. You know, that the whole thing was set up or whatever. But you know, anyway, he'll be back later too.
right.
But back to this episode. Do you have anything else you wanted to say about Justice?
I thought Clark Johnson was good. There was no real.
I liked the little scene where everybody was sitting around, kind of talking about stuff, and G came in and kind of gave them little.
Yes, G was good.
Little mini lecture.
G was good for the SJ temperament, and for his character in this. Yeah, he was only in it a little bit, but it was very well written whilst he was in it.
So that's the kind of moments I like with Homicide, is that, you know, the detectives that aren't the ones mainly involved in the particular case will still have little scenes where they say stuff and like the details of that, as opposed to, you know, not to keep bringing up Law and Order, but a show like that where you almost never hear from any of the other detectives. It's like they're just that's moving around because, you know, they don't want to pay them to have lines.
And there was that bit where G mentioned the fact, you know, when they were laughing, and G didn't like them laughing by the fact that, you know, because of respecting the officer.
Yes. That's what I was talking about. He kind of does the little scolding of the the cops for showing him respect or whatever. But
I don't know if we've mentioned it on air, but Yaphet Koto's uncle was a detective. We've mentioned it off air, I think. Yeah. So
supposedly he has some like African royalty in his family somewhere back too. I can't remember. Or some kind of royalty. Somehow he's related to a king somewhere. Like, or somebody like that. I remember reading that about him. Anyway, yeah.
Well, irrespective of that, it will be doing well financially, given the number of things he has been in.
Yeah, I mean, should be if he's spent his money wisely.
Well, I mean, I don't know what the temperament of the actor is.
I don't either. I could only guess.
Right. I don't think. I mean, unless some of these names pop out to us, we could go over that, see if any of these little names, any of the names pop out. Mentioned him. That's Danvers, I think.
Yep.
Isn't that the little fella?
Perlick is
Brody.
That's Brody. Yeah.
I don't know if your sound's gone. I don't know. They probably don't pop out. Don't know if these pop out.
Michael Willis is the defense attorney. Darren Russell.
He's good. He gets a tick. All right, so let's talk about him for a little bit. Has he been in like many things, that guy? Or
Michael Willis?
Yeah.
I mean, I've seen him pop up in a few things besides Homicide, and it's not the only thing he's played a lawyer in either. But I have seen him play something that wasn't a lawyer. I can't remember. I think he may have even been on a Law and Order episode playing somebody else, like somebody they interviewed that was like part of a business or something. I don't remember.
Right.
Yeah, I liked the name when you got to that next line of stars, guest stars, the Schwenk. I liked the that name, and Munch said the way he said it every time, Schwenk.
Yes. Look. There we go. Schwenk.
Yeah, I think that was the son, was Alan, and then there was the mother. I can't remember her, but I guess she was listed in the front cast.
Well, I'll go and have a look.
I don't remember. I don't know what the actress's name is, but boom, 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 boom.
So yeah, I mean, this year
Anyway.
you can see how the updating the computers in the office, the year of change, because I remember that happened to me as well.
What did you think of the Munch and Russert pairing?
It's not the worst. It has promise, but
Okay.
you see, any kind of interest in character development for Munch would stop him from being in the NTP. I'm just saying it how it is. Because ENTP
I mean, they've already
sort of don't have a
shown-
core to them. So it's like,
They've shown more about his character than they have even some others in terms of we've seen where he lives, or seen pictures from his past and
yeah, that kind of stuff.
girlfriends from his past, and
I don't know, it's...
I liked
suppose-
the part where he was telling Russert, like, here's how the argument works, because he was trying to make her be like Bolander was. Be like, I say something and then you argue with me and then we argue for an hour about that. Russert's just like, no, I don't buy it. That's not making Munch happy. He's like, somebody's supposed to be arguing with me.
Yeah.
Like you say with the NTPs, they need to have somebody argue with them or they're not happy. So.
Oh yeah. Because because they like to debate, they love to debate, to practice their debating skills.
Mm-hmm.
And beat someone in a debate,
Yeah.
even when they know they're not right. Because right
Yeah,
and
that's
wrong
the
is
thing
not
is
very
that-
important to ENTPs.
Is that in his discussions with Bolander, and he kind of points it out here, is it really didn't matter whether he quote unquote won. It was just about the debate of it and the fact that Bolander would keep arguing with him about stuff. Because that's just how Bolander was, that he could find stuff where he would care enough about it that he would stick up for whatever his side of the argument was. Like when they argued about drugs.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a good combination. I really don't know what to say. I mean, at certain times I've become a terrible critic. Where it's like, I mean, you usually divide things like in three categories. Like you've got story, characterization, and dialogue. Well, story was okay. Characterization was consistent with what it's normally been. Dialogue was, I mean, I suppose the dialogue wasn't sparkling. It wasn't as witty as in previous episodes because it's like a different writer. There didn't seem to be a lot of the witty dialogue. So it's almost
Yeah,
like that
I
went on
thought-
holiday in this episode.
My view is that this one it seemed like it was missing something. It just, in terms of and not just because Kellerman wasn't there, because they've had a detective not there before, and it still, works. But just in terms of the banter and stuff, like there were a couple of good scenes with that, but they're not up to the usual standard. I liked they were all together, and and the little details of things like Pembleton saying, making his comment, like when the others are talking about like, the afterlife or whatever, and Pembleton, the one is the one who says he's just going to go into the ground, and Russert says, so says the Catholic or whatever. He just kind of gives a smile. So I like those little interactions.
Yeah, maybe then he could have said lapsed Catholic.
Yeah. Yeah, well, Pemberton is definitely not finished struggling with that stuff. He's got more of those to come. So, like those little bits, because they kind of call back to things, and little things like Bayless always trying to find something in the refrigerator, eating other people's food.
Well, he's a big guy. He's like 6'4", so that's realistic.
And Lewis conveniently waiting until he was about to eat the sandwich to tell him that it had been in the fridge for 3 weeks.
I think you should maybe have waited a little bit longer.
Yeah, take a bite out of it first.
I mean, in real life, an SP would have let him.
Well, that's what
enjoying that. It's been in there a week.
I was about to say is another difference I think between Lewis and Pemberton, because I think Pemberton was prepared to let him take a bite of the sandwich, and then but Lewis told him before he took a bite.
In fact, I would have been prepared to let him take a bite.
More, yeah, Lewis has a little bit more. He really is like compassionate. You know, he's got that thing where he doesn't really want to see anybody suffer in any way.
Yes, I remember there was a story where we first saw that with Lewis when they went to DC with Crissetti, and Lewis was taking the ethical angle. I can't remember the details of the story though.
Yeah, it was about the Chinese dissidents or whatever.
Yes.
Embassy.
Yes, that's it. The embassy story.
The politics of sweeping stuff under the rug, and Lewis was bothered by it. Meanwhile, Crissetti was still focused on the Lincoln assassination. So yeah.
I haven't think this.
So yeah, this is one of those rare occasions where you give a higher rating than me, because I give this one a 7. So, but still good, just not among the best. The next one I think is both better and worse for different reasons. It's teleplay by David Simon. I think you'll like the dialogue.
Yeah.
But there's also a couple of plot things that are kind of.
Yeah, it depends. So. I mean, sometimes, as you get older, you get a bit more. Oh, it's only TV; it doesn't matter. The plot.
Yeah, well, I am that way, and like I said, the overwhelming majority of the time, I like the things Homicide does that the typical TV show doesn't, and vice versa, like the things they don't do that the typical TV show does. And the next one, there's one thing that's sort of typical TV that happens, but there's also other things that make it not going to let it just be that. So that's why I can still. So anyway,
this might be the time to end. It says we're winding up phone's going, so we'll just stop.
Join us next time for Justice Part 2.
Bye-bye, folks. Let's see.